8, and we'll bring you a final news headline update at 8:30. Now, as we return to our lead story this morning about the ANC and their reaction to yesterday's Constitutional Court ruling, and of course, so much reaction coming from all quarters after the Constitutional Court yesterday sentenced former President Jacob Zuma to 15 months in jail for being in egregious and aggravated contempt of court after he failed to appear and participate at the Commission of Inquiry into allegations of state capture. And our guest at this point is political analyst Koko Aubrey Matshiqi. Thanks so much for staying with us, Koko, and as we continue. And I indicated that I want to touch on some of the political ramifications in as far as the potential for unrest of whatever kind, which we will unpack further. So Edward Zuma, he, of course, is the son of the former president, and he's come out and he said that he will lay down his life for his father. Nobody will take his father to prison whilst he is there. And the former president's daughter, Duduzile, also said that her father was in high spirits, though, at this time. No fear, they will be escorting him to serve his time closer to home in Nkandla. And we're just going to take a look at that video where Edward Zuma made his pronouncements, and we can speak to that after we watch this. Let's just take a quick look.
Zuma, I think my position has been known, and I still maintain my position that, whatever decisions are taken by law enforcement agencies of this country, well, they'll have to kill me first before such thing is implemented.
By kill you first, Mr. Zuma, you mean before your father can be dragged from his home to prison, they'll have to kill you first?
Exactly.
So you are saying Zuma?
Well,
so the sentiments from the former president's son, Edward Zuma, Aubrey. And I must say, listening to reaction from opposition political parties and other stakeholders in society yesterday, I must say I did get a sense of some concern from most of the reactions that in as much as people welcomed the Constitutional Court judgment, there was some concern that this could possibly lead to some form of instability in the country. What is your sense?
The concern, Sakina, is not unfounded because my own concern is with regard to another convergence. The convergence of the storm coming out of Nkandla and the storm coming out of the conflict within the Zulu Royal House. When the two converge, there is the potential of a very serious social and political instability, particularly in two provinces, that is Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal, and beyond that, maybe the country as a whole. Now, the words of Edward Zuma are the words of a son who is angry, who is emotional. Now, whether the anger is justified or not is not the issue. The issue is that the words he utters may feed into a much broader climate of anger in response to the Concord judgment, and therefore may feed into what potentially may become violent instability in the country. But let me say this. All of this makes sense only if we are not exaggerating the level of support the former president will enjoy. Because it's quite possible that the level of support we imagine will not materialize because it does not exist, in which case what we heard yesterday from Edward Zuma would be nothing more than saber rattling.
And that's going to be an interesting one to watch. The ANC, for their part, they will meet this weekend to discuss the consequences and, of course, the impact of yesterday's judgment. And obviously coming out to say they support the rule of law. But which questions do you think the ruling party needs to grapple with post yesterday's judgment, Aubrey?
Well, the first question to ask is from me, which ANC? And secondly, in my view, the less said about the ANC, the better. Because the ANC is complicit in the generation of circumstances and forces that have brought us to this point. It is the same ANC which uncritically defended Jacob Zuma for many years, for the better part of the past 15 years. And now we must take the ANC seriously and therefore take as credible the statements it is making about what happened yesterday and about the need for peace and calm and about its commitment to judicial processes. Because there was a time when, in defense of Jacob Zuma, the ANC itself was not only critical, but was in the judicial. So that's why the less said about in my view, better.
And then, of course, couldn't help but notice some of the public's comments around this particular matter. And inevitably, the apartheid era leaders come into the fray. De Klerk, for example, was trending, and people in some quarters were saying, well, you know, here we have a freedom fighter now being imprisoned when we know some of the apartheid era protagonists who committed atrocities against mankind are still on the loose, have never seen a day in jail. How do you read that?
Well, I will repeat what I have said many a time before, and I will continue saying it until I have no reason to repeat it. South Africa belongs not to all those who live in it. South Africa belongs to those who conquered it, and the ANC is complicit in no small measure in creating this reality. Secondly, in spiritual terms, the ANC is a very dark space, a space that is in need of deep cleansing spiritually. And what we call factionalism in the ANC is but a symptom of the deeper spiritual malaise that I am talking about. Now, of course, you are right to point out what seems to be some kind of inconsistent attitude towards those who fought for the struggle, who fought in the struggle against apartheid, when they err, when they are in defiance, and when they betray the cause for which they fought, on the one hand, and the attitude we seem to have towards the perpetrators of colonialism and apartheid during the liberation struggle. But it makes perfect sense to me, Sakina. If you look, for instance, at a case such as that of Nokuthula Simelane. I beg yours?
No, I was saying Simelane, yeah.
Yes. So if you look at that case, the Timor case, the case of the Craddock 4, there's a very serious exercise in betrayal there that is being perpetrated by the ANC government. Why is it that the ANC government lacks the appetite to make sure that those who did not get amnesty from the TRC, which TRC had said must be prosecuted, why is it that it does not have the appetite for that? Could it be that when former Justice Minister Bridget Mabandla discouraged the former head of the NPA, Vusi Pikoli, from pursuing them by saying that if he goes after them, they will come after us? Could it be that she was speaking to acts of betrayal that happened much earlier during the liberation struggle? And because of those acts of betrayal, if they go after these apartheid leaders and perpetrators of a crime against humanity that apartheid was. These people will then come after the ANC or its leaders or some of its members precisely because the betrayal meant that these people were their handlers. Could that be the case? I don't know.
And of course, that's a very serious question. But also, I have to ask you about what this means for the incumbent, for President Cyril Ramaphosa as ANC president, and of course as president of the country, a man who came in on a ticket of, reclaiming the moral high ground, integrity in terms of the ANC and government, a clean-up campaign of the corruption that has been going on unabated seemingly for quite a long time. So what does all of this mean for him and his strength at this point in both the government and the ANC?
I think as matters stand, Sakina, President Cyril Ramaphosa is in charge. I think the balance of support within at least the National Executive Committee of the ANC favor, and I think in the short term that will remain the case. And that is good for Cyril Ramaphosa. Whether that balance of forces is good for the country is another question altogether, because I've already referred to the possibility of a storm that will be caused by the hunger of our people, precisely because the ANC government has mishandled the COVID-19 crisis.
And just finally, a few scenarios, if we could sketch them, in terms of what happens if the former president, for some or other reason, does not hand himself over to start his prison term.
That scenario, Sakina, is too ghastly, as John Foster said, to contemplate. Because in that situation, you, in all probability, will be having people, maybe former MK veterans and others, acting in defense of Jacob Zuma, coming into conflict with our security forces, in which case, Sakina, the possibility of violence cannot be ruled out. If my reports are anything to go by, as early as last night, meetings were happening in some of our hospitals, in both KZN and Gauteng. Now, there's no price for testing what the topic of discussion was at such meeting.
Aubrey Matshiqi, thanks so much for your time. Gogo Aubrey Matshiqi, helping us just look at some of the political implications and ramifications of yesterday's judgment by the Constitutional Court, which found former President Jacob Zuma in egregious and aggravated contempt of court for his failure to appear and participate at the Commission of Inquiry into allegations of state capture. And he was subsequently sentenced to 15 months imprisonment. So with that, let's park that there for the time being. We'll share some of your views to our question of the day.